slides from the creator, Nick Paris. He himself is a storyboarding storyboard artist, I'm sorry, and he is working at Nickelodeon. So we thought we mentioned his name and give him his credit for the work that he did. So we did borrow some of the slides. So let's begin with storyboarding. What is it used for? Right away, we know that it's used for animation, so TV animation, even commercials and movies especially, video games and music videos, of course. Now, storyboarding careers, I know I have a little friend, a colleague of mine who definitely knows way more than me, and he could explain it a little bit better, so I'm gonna let him chime in on this one. Jaden?
Yes, thank you, Dinah. So within storyboarding, there's different levels of these positions, right? So storyboard revisionist is the entry level. They're the ones that make corrections to the boards. The storyboard artist is the one that actually draws the boards. Another thing that they do besides draw them is they're responsible for what's called a pitch, where they make a little presentation of the boards that they did for that project to their supervisor for feedback and corrections. And then the lead storyboard artist is the leader of that department who oversees the boards and gives part of that criticism. So you've got the person drawing the boards, the person fixing the boards, and then the person overseeing them.
Yep. Thank you so much, Jaden. I know it rolls off his tongue a lot smoother than on mine. So for careers in comics, again, we have, just so that we know there's a difference, you know, you have your storyboarding for your animation, and of course, then you have your careers for storyboards, and then now you have your careers for comics. So in comics, one of the, three of the main careers, or some of the careers, are your sketch artist. So this is the person who's going to be doing the rough draft, the drawing where it's very sketchy, as you could see on the bottom left-hand corner. Then you have your ink or your line artist. This person go ahead, they polish the drawing, they make the drawing very clean. If you can notice, they have those dark outlines, so they come in with the ink and start putting all of these things. By the way, guys, this is all of Jaden's work. Just want to make sure that I give him credit. And of course, finally, colorist. This is a person who only specifically focuses on coloring and rendering, what we call rendering the comic itself. And of course, you have your writer and your editor, and those could be just as fun. So next, now we're going to start talking a little bit more about storyboarding. So what is storyboarding? So as it says here, it is a blueprint. This could be a blueprint to a film, a television commercial, some sort of story visual that you're trying to see. So again, this storyboard is a collection of images used to plan out a story visually. So as you could see here, you have the story of the chicken crossing the street, and you have these panels sequential, in sequential order. So pretty much is the way to visually organize and display thoughts and ideas, right? So obviously you're going to start with the script. You're going to start drawing. So this is where the storyboard is a perfect place to test out your scenes before you fully commit on illustrating anything. Because if you make a mistake, you make this beautiful drawing, and then you find some sort of mistake, or maybe that scene was cut out. So you made this whole entire work for nothing. So basically this is, it's gonna help save time. So what they do here before they start storyboarding, and they really get into detail with that, they use thumbnails. And thumbnails are, before starting your storyboard, they create these thumbnails, and they're very quick drawings of your ideas. So if you notice, they're very loose and sketchy. They're not perfect. They allow you to only hold the most vital information of the scene. And obviously they allow you to explore an object from different angles, different perspectives, as you could see, different shots, bird's eye view, a close-up. So you could play around with the proportion of either, of either the character, his or herself, or the scene. Now, one quick tip, if you do some sort of sketching, or it could be for whatever you want to do. You know, it could be for an illustration, but in this case, we're talking about storyboarding. One great way to get started is by using shorthand, and this is a great weapon. And shorthand is basically that quick little rough sketch. As you could see, this character right here is fully rendered on your left-hand side, but it started right here, where it was just a very quick and easy sketch just to help the artist have a vision of what they're doing, right? So who here knows this gentleman? And I'll go ahead and wait a little bit to see if anybody answers. Who?
Someone got it. John
Yeah,
got
John Weaver. Oh, and Snoop. Yep, everybody's chiming in. Walt Disney. That is correct.
Yes, Disney, Walt Disney himself. So fun fact about Walt Disney is that he was a storyboard director and editor, and he helped develop the use of storyboarding back in the 1920s. I don't know if you guys remember his classic Mickey Mouse cartoon, Steamboat Willie. That pretty much took the same sequence and the same concept. If you see here, this is not the Mickey Mouse Steamboat Willie, but this is Pinocchio, and you could see how they set it up on the board scene by scene, and they're actually talking about it. They're meeting up in a group and discussing what scene is going to be used and what scene they should take out, what's extra, what's needed. And here's just a little extra of couple of pictures of the Steamboat Willie. You could see here some of the rough sketches on this little thumbnail right here. And then next you have, I believe this would be your storyboard, correct, Jaden? This one right here on our right?
Yes.
Right. So we have our little thumbnails, and then we have our storyboard. And next we have my colleague Hector, who's going to go ahead and continue and talking about comics. Those are fun too, so stay tuned. Let me stop sharing here.
So thank you, Dinah, for giving us all that explanation about storyboarding. So I'm going to be talking a little bit more about comics and also a little bit about storyboarding and what are some of the differences and some of the similarities. So let's get started. So like Dinah mentioned, a storyboard is a graphic representation of how your video or your animation will unfold. So basically it's a shot-by-shot sequence. So like you see on this image right here, there is different panels with the characters or thumbnails, and you see the guidelines. You see how they're going to be moving. You see those little red arrows. They show where they're gonna be moving. You also see where the camera is going to be, because as I'm gonna explain a little bit later, there are different types of camera shots or camera angles. And so you want to make sure that you use the right shot to capture the best part of your story. So comic books, by difference, is a publication that consists of comics art in the form of sequential panels that represent individual scenes. So as you can see, and as Dinah mentioned, storyboarding is very sketchy, very loose. You're not as interested in creating a finalized piece. Whereas in comics, you see that there's a lot of detail. There's also what we call the thought bubbles, which shows us what the characters are thinking. There's also the speech bubbles, which is basically the dialogue that they're doing. We also have the inks that go over the pencils so that they stand out. And we also have the color. Color is a big part of it. Back in the day, they used to use, for example, for ink, they use black India ink with either a brush or a pen. And same thing for colors. They use watercolors or markers, or even the old printers. These days, everything is digital, so you can use programs like Photoshop or Adobe Spark. There's all kinds of different programs that allow you to work on comics. Also, another main difference between a comic book and a storyboard is that a comic book shows us, it can show us different time frames within each panel. Usually with storyboard, you want to make sure that each little square, each sequence follows a logical order and is very, very organized. But in comic books, you can have one panel showing you one location and then jump into a completely different area with a different character. With storyboard, you wouldn't really do that. You will break down each scene separately. But however, they do start up in a similar fashion when it comes to sketching. So it's a very rough penciling just to get the idea. You're trying to work out where the character is going to be. You want to make sure that you use dramatic angles, and we're going to be talking on some of the camera shots. So next you start, in comic books, you start refining, you start adding details, make sure that if you're doing a human figure, you're using the proper anatomy. If you're doing a realistic drawing, and also you finally pencil in all the details. For example, if a character has a costume, make sure that it looks really nice. Also use the shadows and the lights. You make sure you put in the details in the background. All those things, all those little details are part of this process. So comic books, again, they use panels to show a sequence of events. They are a final medium or product, while storyboarding is just part of the process, or basically a stage in the process. You start drawing your little sequence, and that's going to help the director and the camera person see how they're going to do in the story, see if it makes sense. If it's something that's going to be animated, it's going to be used either by the 3D department, who's going to be doing 3D models of the characters. Also, the comics use speech thought balloons. They have the pencil lines inked. They use color, and they also have sound effects. And also, I know Jaden is going to add something very important about speech balloons when you're doing your comics. So, Jaden?
Yes. So as you can see here in this example, these are pretty fully rendered sketches. But one thing that's really important when you're making a comic is to figure out where your speech bubbles are going to go when you're still in the early sketching process. Because if you look at these drawings, if you were to try to put a speech bubble anywhere on there, it's going to end up covering a part of the drawing because it looks like the artist didn't leave room for the speech bubbles, or maybe there's no dialogue meant to happen here. But the last thing you want is to have a really cool, awesome drawing and then having the speech bubble covering a part of it. So definitely plan out where your speech bubbles go in the sketching process. And then with backgrounds, there's actually a little cheat with comics with backgrounds. If you draw like a whole environment, like an establishing shot, just to show the outside of where the characters are, in the next couple panels after that, if you have characters maybe talking back and forth or closer dialogue, you don't have to keep continuously drawing the background in super detail, because now that you've already shown us where they are, we don't have to keep reminding the audience like the background that they're in, because you already established the location. So that's a good little cheat there. So you don't have to like keep drawing the background over and over again. And then one last thing is that, again, in this example, you see the little spaces between the boxes. That area is called the gutter, and the gutter indicates a passage of time. So from one panel to the next, it could either be immediately, like it looks like this is a fight scene going on between Spider-Man and some other character. And it could either be immediate, or it could be an hour later, a year later, a month later. There's also speech bubbles that are used to indicate these passages of time. You know how sometimes when you read a comic, it says 1 hour later or stuff like that. So those are little narrative devices that you can use in your comics as well.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Jaden. And finally, on this panel, we can see that comics are either self-contained stories, so they could be one issue and that's a whole story by itself, or they can be part of a series. So they could have multiple issues that tell one story. And usually when they do something like that, they eventually release what is called a graphic novel, which is basically a collection of the comic books that make up that story. So that is something that you want to make sure that you keep in consideration if you're trying to create your own comic book. Now, this is really important. I wanted to really focus on this a little bit. These are different types of camera shots or angles, and they work the same way whether we're talking about movies or TV shows or video games, or in this case, comic books. There are many different types of shots, but the ones that I'm gonna be covering over here are some of the most common ones. So the first one on the top left is called the long shot or the extreme long shot. Sometimes it's also referred as the panoramic shot, and that's basically what it is. It basically tells you where you are. So you see, in this case, you see Batman and Superman, and they're coming down, and you see the background of the city. So they're obviously coming into some kind of port. So it establishes the location of where the action is going to take place.
Yeah, I was just gonna say sometimes they call that the establishing shot.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, the establishing shot. Very common that usually it's one of the first shots you see in a movie. You know, for example, you see a big desert or you see a big ocean, because you want to make sure that the audience right away is familiar of where the action is taking place. Oh, where are we? So that is the long shot or the extreme long shot. Coming in closer, we see the one in the middle, the two shot. And it's basically, in this case, two characters on screen. Usually they're shot or framed from the waist and up. Then we have on the top right, the medium shot, which is similar to the two shot, but this is just one character in particular. On the bottom left, this is called the over the shoulder shot. And if you notice, we're basically looking at it from the point of view of if we were looking over the shoulder of Batman, because we're interested in the reaction of the character. It's not very common when it comes to comic books, but on TV they use it a lot when they do interviews, because you're always interested in the reaction of the person that's being interviewed. They also use it on movies as well. The next one up is called the close-up, and this is also very, very common, and is mainly used to get the reaction, to capture the reaction up close. You know, somebody's like laughing or crying, you want to make sure that you capture that. You don't want to use a long shot for somebody that's crying, because you're gonna miss all the details and the emotion. And even a stronger form of that is called the extreme close-up, which you would basically focus on the eyes of a person or on the mouth, or on the hands if they're grabbing something that, you know, they're trying to show that it's something important, and you don't want the audience to guess what they're trying to grab. The last two shots that we're going to be looking at are the bird's eye view, which is basically an overhead view. So you're looking down as if you were a bird from the top down. And of course, the opposite, which is called the low shot or the worm's eye view. And in this case, you can see that we're looking up almost from the ground up, and you're trying to showcase that the image in the background is very, very important. So those are some of the different types of shots of video and animation and photography. And one exercise that I like to do for you guys to do at home, when you watch a movie, next time you watch a movie or a TV show, pay attention to the different types of shots that they're doing. And if you want to develop your own comic book, see why they did that particular sequence in the way that they did it. And finally, I'm going to be talking about some resources that you can do if you're interested in either comic books or storyboarding. So the first one is called How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way by Stan Lee and Joe Buscema. So this book is quite old, but it's still very, very useful. And it teaches you everything. It teaches you how to draw a character, teaches you about perspective, which is important, anatomy, using the different tools like the ink and pen or brush, and also some of the basics about writing and how to compose your comic book. The next one is called Comics and Sequential Art by Will Eisner. This one is very useful for either storyboarding or comic books. And this one focuses more on how to frame your story, some of the devices that you can use, why they are used. So it's really, really good, and it's equally important whether you're doing comic books or if you want to get into storyboarding. The next one up is called Storyboarding Essentials, and this is part of the SCAD Creative Essentials. So this book in particular by David Harlan Rousseau and Beth Reed Phillips is strictly about storyboarding and the whole process, and they go into more details about, for example, what is called the panning when you're going from side to side with the camera. So the characters are static, but your camera is moving. There's tracking or zooming in and zooming out. And as you can see, there's an arrow in this picture at the bottom, which showing us which way the character is moving. And if you see, this is also like a ground shot. So this is almost like a bird's eye view, a worm's eye view of that sequence. And finally, if you're also a big Star Wars fan, there is a Star Wars Storyboards, the original trilogy by Lucasfilm. I don't know how many of you have seen the original Star Wars, and I imagine quite a few of you. But this book in particular shows us the exact process, the storyboarding that made the way for that movie, and what the writer and the director were coming up with, and how they were visualizing the story before you go on location and you start filming. Because as you might think, you know, you're paying their actors and you're paying the lighting people, the costumes. So you want to make sure that you already have your storyboard, which is your blueprint for the movie, all set up. You don't want to go on location where it's far away and you only have a certain amount of time to capture your movie, and start trying to figure out where the character is going to be standing or what's going on. So that's pretty much it about my presentation, and going into more detail and show us the actual process of storyboarding is going to be my coworker, Jaden. So I'm passing it over to you, Jaden.
All right. Thank you guys for that presentation. So now that we've talked a lot about the process of comic books and storyboards and how they work, you guys are going to see some of this in action. So I hope you're excited to see that.
Mm-hmm.
So I've kind of set up my little workspace here for you guys today. The app that I'm using is called Adobe Sketch. It's a free app to use for both iOS and Android. It's meant for mobile devices, so either on a phone or a tablet. And we're not going to get too much into the app itself, more so the process of storyboarding. So I went ahead and found a template online for just to have 9 basic panels, little squares laid out for me, so I can scribble some stuff in. And we actually, I believe we have this template, and we're not going to get too much into the app itself, more so the process of storyboarding. So I went ahead and found a template online for just to have 9 basic panels, little squares laid out for me, so I can scribble some stuff in. And we actually, I believe we have this template, and I designed my characters, which I have here, Aster and Rigel on the left. I put them there just so I remember what they look like. Even though they're my own characters, sometimes I don't remember every single detail. But of course, we're going to be using the shorthand technique, so we're going to try not to get too crazy on the detail and just keep it simple. So if you look on the right, I have my layers set up. I'm going to be sketching on a separate layer so I don't affect the boxes underneath. And I'm just going to be using the pencil tool. So let's see. I'm not starting from the very beginning of the script. I'm kind of jumping somewhere in the middle. And I'm just going to draw out a couple of panels to show you guys the process. But we're going to do some time travel magic. I'm going to show you what the finished product looks like of the boards themselves, and they're a little bit more detailed. And then after that, the next step that comes after storyboarding, which Dinah and Hector didn't mention this, so I'm going to tell you, is called an animatic. So an animatic is when you take the storyboards and you put them in like video format. It's almost like having a slideshow, and you add audio to it. You have the characters talking with their voiceover, you have sound effects, sometimes music. So you're going to see a little bit of movement. It's not going to be the full-fledged animation, but it's going to be the rough draft that comes like right before that step. So look forward to that. All right, so I'm going to zoom in on my script here so I can read it a little better. When you get older, your eyes are not what they used to be. So I'm going to zoom in on this.
So all of this is part of the Adobe Sketch program?
Just what's on the right.
Oh, okay.
I have Microsoft Word on the left. It's just
Okay.
my script that I'm split screening, so I can have two apps side by side.
Okay. And where can they, our attendees, where can we find Adobe Sketch?
Adobe Sketch is a mobile device. It works for both Android and iOS. It could be either on a phone or a tablet. So you can either scribble with your finger on your phone, or you can use a tablet with a stylus. But it is a mobile application. It doesn't work on a computer, on a desktop. It has to be a tablet or a phone.
Okay.
And it's free to use. All you have to do is create an Adobe account. You just sign up with your email and it's free.
Thank you.
Yes. So once again, I lost my place a little bit. Sorry, let me figure out where it is I'm starting. I was gonna start from where he says, "Who's there?" at the top. So I'm gonna zoom in a little bit here and start in my first panel. And I'm gonna have my little character. My composition right now is I want him to be here. It's gonna be really loose and sketchy and silly. He's like, he's kind of, he's here. And then there's like some mountains in the background. He's like in some desert area. And there's like a pillar over here that the other guy's hiding behind because he's planning to ambush him.
So while he's sketching, you guys go into the comments and let us know like what type of comics do you watch? Do you like sketching? Are you looking forward to sketching with us, in the last webinar of the month? Do you guys have your own sketchbooks? Please go ahead and, talk. Let's talk in the chat.
Yeah, and if you have any more questions that you'd like me to answer while I'm doing this, please go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you do. Astocat. I'm sorry, I can't read. I have no idea.
Astocat Life, is it? LFE.
Okay. So Zaria doesn't like to. She's not a big fan of drawing, but she likes to write. Oh, it's I have no. I'm sorry for messing up.
Astocat, let me ask you, what program do you like to use when you're doing your art? Or do you use traditional pencil and paper? That's also a way to go.
Yeah. Like Jaden
like
is fancy.
Astocat Ife. I think that's how you say it.
Oh, okay. Jaden is just very fancy and he uses his iPad. So,
But, like we saw earlier with Walt Disney, like back in the day, it was literally just pencil and paper. They didn't have all the technology we do now to make stuff easier. So I really implore you guys to get started. A fun activity that you can do is just with like a pack of sticky notes, because sticky notes are already square and small. Each of those can kind of serve as like an individual panel. And because sticky notes, you can stick them on the wall, you can kind of do what Walt Disney did and put them on the wall. And the beauty of the sticky notes is that you can rearrange and take them off and change your story as you go, because they're all individual little panels. It's easy to edit them. So it's a nice traditional way to get started.
So we have quite a few comments. Kennedy saying that I like Marvel and DC movies and TV shows, but they have never read an actual comic book. So LOL.
That's okay.
I like Avatar: The Last Airbender as well. Also, by the way, I wanted to
Avatar's
mention that we have
amazing.
a lot of comic books and graphic novels in our libraries, and they're free to check out. You can
Yeah.
definitely, if you're curious about a particular character, and we also have them available for mobile devices because you can check them out virtually. Right now, that is, we're living in a little bit of difficult times as far as being out and about, but you can download the stories or the books onto your mobile devices. So
Yeah.
definitely look into that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think Hoopla and RB Digital, some of the apps that you can find on our website or using it through our library's app. You can
Mm-hmm.
download comics and manga and stuff like that.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
remember, guys,
Hoopla's awesome. Mhm.
yeah, even if you are not, wait, I don't know how that works. If they're not here in Miami, does that still work the same?
Well, we
Double check.
normally have like an outside. If a person lives outside of the county, they have to pay a different fee. But right now, I think that you may be able to. I don't want to speak on that because I'm not really sure what the new policy is, but they're trying to kind of let people use our services for free right now. So just check it out. Go to our library's website and see if you can download the apps or get a virtual library card and see what kind of information that it asks you to get. You still may be able to do it.
Or just check out your local libraries because you can
Mhm.
also uh, sign off and then just pick up the book, and that way you can enjoy while you're on the at home. We also have some more comments. Let me go ahead and read the next one up by Irvin Hopkins. I can write really well. My illustrations just aren't that good. But that's okay. You can always work on that. Another thing is you don't have to do everything when you're doing a comic book. You
Yeah.
can just be a writer and then look around to see maybe one of your friends is really good at drawing, but they're not as good as you are writing up a story or coming up with characters. This is a team project for the most part. It's very, very rare to find somebody who does everything from writing the story to illustrating and doing the colors. So definitely a team project. Hmm.
Yep. Let's check in on Jaden. Let's see what he's up to. Let's see.
So I
Where are you
cheated
at,
a little
Jaden?
bit. I had some of them drawn out, but just comparing the script with the panels to make sure they kind of line up. I'm starting here where he's like, "What? Who's there?" So he's like, "Who's there?" He turns around, and then it's saying over here that he's like freaking out because this character jumps out at him. He has like these big laser cannon things sticking out of his arms. He points them towards the camera and he's like firing some lasers. And then here, Rigel's from a bird's eye view. He looks really tiny. There's a shadow casting over him because the other character is lunging to jump on him. And then there's this big like explosion of action happening. So notice how these are really scribbly, really loose, especially compared to the two characters that are next to them that are fully colored and rendered. And by the
Mhm.
way, we mentioned earlier that we are going to be doing a character design webinar as well. Character design is my specialty. It is my favorite thing to do. So I'm really excited to share that with you guys in the future. So definitely stick around for that.
Mhm.
But I just wanted to show a little bit of the scribbling process, but now I'm going to show you guys, again, we're going to do some time traveling magic
Well,
to
Jaden,
show, yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted you get to introduce your characters. Can you please say what's the first character's name?
Oh, sure. So I wrote their names down over here just to be able to keep track of who's who, but Aster is this like cyborg guy, and then Rigel is this little alien guy. So it's all very like outer space, sci-fi-y.
I
Um,
love these characters.
thank you.
These are all
I took
Jaden's
them.
characters, guys.
Mhm. And another thing that I also wanted to mention going into the next phase, this that I did here, the script and the storyboards, I did this when I was in school and I was learning, but for any Miami natives here, there's actually a college, Miami-Dade College, and they have a program for animation where when you enter, I think after 3 semesters of being there, you have the opportunity to pitch your idea in a contest, and then the winning pitch idea gets their idea made into a 2-minute animated short with their class. So your classmates are pretty much your team. So it gives you a little bit of experience of what it's like to work on a production in an industry setting while you're at school. So it's really cool. I ended up doing that program, and this was my script for it. So let me go back over here, and this is a little bit more detailed what the panels look like when I add more to them. Here you can see a little bit more of the background. In storyboards, you don't have to focus too much on the backgrounds. It's more focused on the characters and the character acting. Usually the backgrounds are pre-drawn by another person. That's a whole other job in itself. But here you can see I added some shading, and I did these little like light effects to show that there's supposed to be like lasers coming out of his arms and these like rockets coming out of his feet. Here we have a different angle where the rockets are like facing the camera as if he's shooting towards the viewer. This is the bird's eye view and the shadow being cast over him. You can see his expression. And, you know, these are just still kind of rough. You can see the pencil in them, but I added a little bit of shadows and lighting. Remember, storyboards are always going to be a point of reference for the animator. So it's a little contradictory because you do have to keep the drawings loose, but still give enough information that's specific so that the animator can figure out what movements they need to do.
I love how this program has all those tools in it, like the pens and the different shading and all that. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, this one has like different brushes to get different effects and stuff. I really like the look of sketchy pencil lines, so I tend to use the pencil tool quite a bit. I actually wanted to point out a little mistake that I made for you guys for future reference. In terms of camera angles and stuff, when you have a character on screen and they're moving, like, let's say left to right, like here, Aster jumps in from the left and he's here, you want to make sure that you keep the direction that the characters are moving in consistent. Because if not, it kind of jumps from one area to the other and it's confusing. Like here, he's going towards the right, like he's falling towards the right, but then in this panel he's the opposite direction. So that was a mistake that I made. So make sure that you avoid jump cuts like that. You want to have continuity in your panels. So this is what a more polished version of the storyboards look like. And if you guys are ready, do you want to hear these characters talk and see them in action?
Do you guys want to hear them in action? It's pretty cool.
Most definitely.
Yes.
If you say no, I'm gonna cry. Please say
no.
But before you go in, and just basically, so the first will come what you did, the storyboard, and then what you're gonna show us right now is the animatic?
Yes.
Yes. So this is just to get a better idea of how it's gonna flow once you start adding some of the voiceover and maybe some of the effects. So
Jaden, everybody is saying yes. They want to hear.
Okay.
They want to see it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So we went from thumbnails to storyboard to animatic. Is that what it's called? Okay, cool.
So like Hector said, the animatic, the purpose of it is to figure out the timing, because, you know, sometimes the episode might be too long and scenes have to get cut. So once you add the audio and see it play in a video format, you get a better sense of how long or short the timing is going to be. So let me make sure the audio is on.
This sucks. I knew I should have read a manual or something on how to pilot these things. I hope it isn't damaged beyond repair. What? Who's there?
You made a mistake coming here alone. If you're supposed to be reinforcement, that's pretty pathetic.
Ah!
Ah!
Whoa! Please, please. I mean no harm. I just got stranded here. What are you talking about?
Don't expect me to believe that just because you're a lousy fighter.
I...
Speechless? I guess you would be after being so easily defeated by my awesomeness. Get ready to eat my laser cannon, punk.
Whoa! Are those vanadium subwoofer laser cannons powered by purified beryllium? Do the cables have USB-Z ports? That visor probably scans all kinds of multi-level readings. That was really awesome. You're the coolest cyborg I've ever seen. I mean, you're the only cyborg I've seen, but still.
Yeah, that's right. I'm gonna wait, say what now? Seriously? You should be trembling in fear. I'm about to blast you, kid. What's wrong with you?
Can I touch it?
What? No! Answer my question. Ah!
Can I touch it now?
No!
But I can fix it.
Boy, if you don't get your hands up off me. Looks like we got company. Get down. Alright, so here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna be the bait, and I'm gonna get out of here. Nice knowing you, kiddo. What did you do to me?
It appears you've been disarmed. I may not be strong enough to fight, but you shouldn't have underestimated me.
You little brat! Put him back! Even without my arms, I can still crush you! Hurry up! It's coming!
Okay. Almost. Okay. I think I'm done.
No, kid. Stick a fork in me because I'm done. You had one job! Didn't I tell you not to?
Put your arms up.
What?
Just do it.
Oh, fine!
Ah! 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 Ah!
So that was my animatic.
That was
Alright,
so
good job.
cool.
People are loving it.
Love it.
So
Good job.
do you want to let them know about how you went about doing this animatic?
Yes.
About the
So
voiceover?
once I had all the drawings finished, I pretty much went into iMovie, and I just put the pictures together like a slideshow in a video editing program. iMovie is a free video editing app on Apple devices, on iPad, Mac, and iPhone. So I put them all in a timeline, and then I had my friends do the voices of my characters. They're both musicians, so they happen to have microphones at home, so they were able to help me out in providing my
That was
characters'
cool.
voices.
They did a good job.
Mhm.
And I noticed you also added the sound effects, and those you
Yes.
can get also from your phone, or there's different sources for that stuff.
GarageBand has a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yes. So some of the music was like royalty-free music that already came inside the video editing app, but yeah, I pulled some sound effects in there as well, some background music while the action was happening. But yeah, one last thing I wanted to show you guys aside from that is we went from storyboard to animatic, but now I want to show you the difference between the animatic and a finished animation. It won't be mine, but I was going to show an example from Nickelodeon. They have a channel on YouTube where they show a lot of side-by-sides of their animatics and their finished stuff. So if you guys have seen the newest reboot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I'm going to show you guys an example from that show.
Okay, so what's the difference between an animatic and a finished animation?
So the animatic, you can see here in this thumbnail that I pulled up, see how it's still really rough and sketchy? There's no color to it. So the animatic is what I just showed you. It's still the rough drawings, but with sounds. And then the finished animation is when they've done the line work, the color, the rendering, and it's like a fully finished product.
Gotcha.
Yes. So I'm going to play just a little part of this scene. There we go.
There we
Hey, you guys want some of my internet famous homemade lemonade? I donate it to folks in Alaska who need a little sunshine. Oh, wow, this is pretty good.
That honestly tastes
Actually,
exactly like
really
sunshine. Wow. And sidebar, cute puppies, non-profit lemonade? This is no spine-breaking bandit.
He's the nicest guy in the world.
We need that RV. We gotta be
I just wanted to make little comments here and there, but notice how here in the comparison between the two, the sketches are really, really loose, really messy. There's not a whole lot of detail, but they use the shorthand here. One of the turtles wears these goggles on his head. So the one with the purple line work, you can tell that he's that turtle. And then there's the orange one with a little bandana around his head. So in this case, they not only use the foreshortening and the different shapes to tell the characters apart, but also the colors. You know, each of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles has a different color. One's purple, one's blue, one's orange, and the other one's red. So this is another way to tell them apart. And there's no background really in this one. There's just a bunch of lines, I guess, to indicate trees, but you can see the side by side how different they are.
tough with him. Hard as nails.
Got it. So, Todd, let's get down to business about your RV. Sure thing.
Could you hold Willis?
Oh, I don't know if I'm... No! Oh, you little mischief maker! Wait a minute! We're supposed to be talking about your RV!
Look, Todd, you haven't made a payment in 2 years, and that means...
Yeah, it turns out all you get for rescuing puppies are $1 million smiles. Ooh, Miho wants her belly rubbed!
My hard as nails brother and I are here to...
And I'll call you Indiana Bone.
So, as you can see, there's a little bit of more shading in this one. You can see all the different puppies like hanging all over him. And there's a little bit of perspective in the background. It appears to be like some windows on the right-hand side, which I think is the exterior of the RV. But it's very loose. And in the scene before this, when they were talking at the table, you notice there was like a grid there. So sometimes just a grid and a couple of lines to give the animator an idea of what perspective the shot is in is enough, where you don't have to go too detailed in drawing the entire background. So this goes on for a couple more minutes, but I'll let you guys check it out on your own. Again, Nickelodeon has a channel on YouTube where they have a ton of these, even for like SpongeBob and The Loud House and a bunch of their shows. That pretty much concludes our presentation. I don't know if there's any more questions in the chat. I haven't been able to take a look at it in a while. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Oh, Noops pointed out that they noticed that on the bottom corner in the animatic, it said scratch for the disc scratching noise. That's another thing that they do as well. Sometimes they have notes for like the cues for when the sound effects are supposed to come in. So I hope I didn't ruin the movie magic a little bit too much. Now you guys know what the rough draft of stuff looks like before it's all pretty and you see it on screen. Now you kind of have a little bit more insight of what the process looks like.
So
Yeah.
any kind of tips for somebody that wants to start doing a storyboard, like how they should be going about it? What kind of advice would you give somebody that was interested in doing their own storyboard or comic?
Number one, I definitely say write first, especially some of you mentioned that you guys love writing stories. Every storyboard needs a story. Like if you don't know what your story is, how do you know what to put down on paper? So I'd say focus on writing stuff first. And if you're not too experienced in drawing, you can start off with something as simple as stick figures. Remember, like storyboarding is very loose, very rough. And even with something as simple as stick figures on sticky notes with just pen and paper, it'll help you just get your ideas down, you know, figuring out the position of where your characters are going to be in each shot, the perspective. Everything just takes practice. But if you're just starting out, I would say write a lot, write as many stories as you can, and just practice with stick figures and just keep doodling. Practice makes perfect.
All right, very, very cool. So that's pretty much it for our presentation on storyboarding. If you guys have any questions, make sure to put them on the chat. And Marlon, what do we have for next week?
So next week is basically like introduction to 2D animation and principles of 2D animation. So we're going to continue with this theme. But I just want to say hats off to Jaden, man. That was pretty cool. I really enjoyed
Yeah,
that.
it's very talented. I keep telling you.
I almost think like the stick figure thing that you drew was in a lot of ways just as interesting as the fully colored in version, like the finished version, because it's still like when you add the sound effects and all that, it still gives you enough to go on that it's still exciting. So yeah, so Jaden, can you tell us a little bit? I know you mentioned it before about your background, like where did you learn this kind of stuff and what kind of classes did you take?
Oh, sure. Well, I entered that animation program at Miami-Dade College, as I mentioned before. We also have another colleague on our team that did that program as well. She couldn't be with us today. She's been out sick for a little bit, but we both have a background in animation. And I really, oh, Angela has a question. How long have you been drawing? I have been drawing my entire life since I could pick up a pencil. I've always been drawing. And yeah, it takes a really long time to get to a certain skill level. So the younger you are, the sooner you start, the better off you'll be. It took me a really long time.
She said her Grace, her daughter's been doing that too since she was little.
Awesome. Yes, you need to keep doing that. So, you know, drawing and all these different skills that we have on our team, like it's a gift. And if you feel like you have something, you're passionate for it, definitely keep practicing, keep doing it every day. I didn't start to really learn more about the industry until very recently. I would say more in like the last 2 years after I've graduated that I really started to learn how animation studios work. And the way that I learned everything that I know now is that I read a lot. I love to go read articles about like stuff that's going on in the industry, all the newest shows that are going to come out. I love watching documentaries on like the behind the scenes of how things are made. I also collect art books. A lot of movies do this, like Disney, DreamWorks, Nickelodeon. They have books that they basically have all the art and the storyboards and the character designs and the work that went into the movie. You can collect it as a book, which I love to do. I know that one documentary I saw very recently was the making of Frozen 2. It's on Disney Plus. If you have Disney Plus, I super recommend it. It was really cool. You even get to see the voice actors playing their characters and how they do the music for the film and everything. It takes a village. It takes hundreds of people to make these things, guys. It's a lot of work. But if you really like it and you want to be part of a team, it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, never without a job. You know, you can always find work when you have
Oh,
these
yeah.
kind of skill sets. That's what I love about all these classes that we're doing is that we're teaching you guys so many different types of skills and different pathways that you can go into. You can have a career forever if you find what it is that you love to do. One other question. What are your course recommendations for a sophomore? I assume that they're Angela's
Sophomore
talking
in
about.
high school or college?
I'm thinking probably high school. Yeah.
High school.
High school.
Okay. Well, another really awesome resource that we have with the library, if you have a library card, is lynda.com. There's a portal on our MDPLS website where you can get lynda.com for free using your library card. I actually learned some courses about comic books on lynda.com pretty recently. But lynda.com has a lot, not just software, but also you can literally type like how to design a character, how to do a comic book, and they even have tutorials for that as well. The awesome thing about the generation that you guys are growing up in is that you have the internet at your fingertips. It is so much easier to find resources to learn stuff than it was back in our day. So definitely check out those books that Hector mentioned earlier if you're interested in storyboarding specifically, but check out books, look at tutorials on lynda.com, on YouTube. But I would definitely say do some searching there and specifically what you want to do. Because today we're covering storyboarding, but you know, we're going to go into animation and character design, and in animation, there's so many different jobs. And each position is like a whole other world in itself. It's a lot. So I would say pick the one thing that you really like and that you're really good at and stick with that rather than trying to juggle like 10 different skills.
And also, just to continue with what Jaden said, something that you want to get into as early as possible, especially if you're trying to develop characters, is take some classes about anatomy, but especially anatomy for illustration and also perspective. Those are two key ingredients that the sooner you start learning and practicing perspective and anatomy, the better your drawings are going to be. Even if you decide to go with a more cartoony look for your art, understanding anatomy is really going to help you out to make sure that your figures don't look distorted, or like one hand is bigger than the other one. So learning how to draw anatomy is key, I think. And references. Always use references. Pictures from Google.
Sorry, Hector, I just wanted to speak on this comment that Angela was just saying, that she's afraid that his daughter will become a starving artist. And I just want to just throw out something on about that. Jaden is saying, like, the same thing with him. His family's kind of thought the same thing, but he turned out fine, as he's saying. But the thing I want to mention is, we're showing you guys all kinds of things that have to do with emerging technology, like, graphic design and coding, music, photography. But if you start thinking about like the gaming and virtual reality, augmented reality, drones, robotics and engineering, that is still related. So if you know how to draw, if you're an artist, if you think about, like, we talk about this all the time, like a drone, for example, we need artists to draw, conceptualize different things on paper or digitally, and then an engineer is going to pick that up and translate that into something that's going to be an engineering piece of equipment, like a 3D animation, a gaming piece of gaming equipment, or a drone, or a robot. So artists are not just, where it used to be, where people think about them only as like drawing things for the newspaper or for comics or whatever. There's a lot of different jobs out there, not to mention movies that are, there are animated movies, and a lot of them are going like really high tech right now, where the animation is turning very digital and 3D and 4D and now.
So again, thank you guys for joining us. I know it's 5:08 and you guys are here only for an hour, but thank you so much for hanging on with us. Anything else you'd like to say, Marlon, Jaden,
Yeah,
Hector?
we'll see you next time for our next class this Friday. It is Principles of 2D Animation. So we'll see you next time. Thank you to our UMIC staff and Technobus staff, and thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next Friday.
Yeah, make sure you guys share our Instagram post, please, and comment and like, so that many other people can get the opportunity to see us as well. Thank you.